Republic of India was formed in 1947 following an unfortunate partition of subcontinent into secular democratic India and Islamic Pakistan. It was unfortunate because it led to heavy bloodshed and the forced migration and death of millions of Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs. Neither India nor Pakistan have recovered fully from it, and the Indian Muslims are trapped by the shadows of partition which now seem to be extending. Between 1947 and 1990, low-intensity firestorms of violence erupted sporadically against Muslims in India, but it was generally not blamed by the government. However, from the 1990s, organized programs and attempts to delegitimize the citizenship of Indian Muslims have been coordinated by a majority party in power, which has fascist notions of citizenship derived from directly from Nazi Germany. By the 1990s, the scene began to change for the worst in India, with the rise of Hindutva, a term coined originally in the 1920s by the Hitler admirer Savarkar. The Western press uses a more understood term Hindu nationalism for Hindutva. Indian critics sometimes use the term majoritarianism to describe the Hindutva mindset. That is, the Hindus should only have the rights as they own the nation, and this is justified because they form the majority. Perhaps Nehru was more to the point when he defined Hindutva as a fascism Hindu style. After lying dormant for 40 years from the mid 1980s, Hindutva was reawakened and led by L.K. Advani. Advani was a refugee politician, an RSS member, originally from Karachi, which is now in Pakistan. The RSS, which had been sidelined after their role in the murder of Mahatma Gandhi, began to sense the possibility of reviving their dream of a Hindu supremacist nation along Hitler's model. The RSS had by then created a political front, the Bharatiya Janata Party (BJP), which stood in elections in 1992. Advani, the leader of the BJP, organized Hindu mobs to raise the Babri Masjid, constructed by Muslim Emperor Babur around 1530 AD, claiming the mosque had been built after razing a Hindu temple which marked the spot where Hindu god Rama was born. The claim that Babur raised a mosque was not substantiated, nor did it require proof for much of the Hindu public. This led to riots and violence against Muslims. It must be noted that the Congress government was ruling the country at that time. But then the PM Narasimha Rao did not have the spine to confront the Hindu mob rule, fearing it would increase support for Advani. Rao had been an RSS member in the 1930s, so it was held by some that connived with the RSS BJP and allowed the felling of the mosque. The triumphalism and the feeling of victory over the Muslims following the demolition of Babri Masjid led to the BJP slowly clawing its way from the two seats in the parliament to eventually forming a coalition government and later a majority government. The Hindus were led to believe that destruction of the mosque was a rightful reclamation. For getting power was set from the Babri Masjid demolition. The BJP could get electoral support by playing an anti-Muslim card, portraying Muslims as anti-nationalists who had despoiled Hindu glory during 800 years of Muslim rule. Advani also undermined the Indian state by making Hindus feel secularism was at that expense and somehow it had pampered Muslims. The Congress was backed into a corner and it did not take a strong stand against Advani, not persecuting for mob violence. The 1990s were the India's equivalent to the Weimar Republic phase of Germany. These were the years before Hitler achieved a majority after running a campaign for hate, violence, and intimidation with a divided and weak opposition. Similarly, the Indian state and opposition in the 1990s has started to wither and was not strong enough to defend the constitutional norms in law and order, and this allowed the fascists to grow in the coming years. The 1990s onwards, the slow poisoning of Hindu minds against the Indian Muslims was carried out by the RSS and BJP. However, the progress to a majority with complete control did not occur immediately. The BJP passed through a stage where they had to form a coalition government under the moderate Vajpayee, who was also an RSS member. The Vajpayee coalition government ran between 1998 and 2004, and it was BJP led. It did not have the majority to lay the foundations of Hindu Hitlerian state. However, the trend for persecution of Muslims and Christians was already apparent. A militant Hindu group called Bajrang Dal burnt alive an Australian missionary and his son. The Christians were accused of forcible conversions. The moderate PM Vajpayee did not comment, while his hardline Home Minister Advani gave a blank slate to Bajrang Dal, declaring it was not a criminal organization. This trend has continued. The BJP gets affiliated with extremist groups to attack minorities and then says it had nothing to do with it. Afterwards, it shields the attackers. During the Vajpayee period, the BJP dominated the state of Gujarat and had state elections in 2002, in which Narendra Modi was running for re-election as the chief minister. The opinion polls predicted a defeat for Modi. Then Modi, the RSS, and the other militant Hindu groups worked together to engineer a major Hindu-Muslim riot in 2002 in Gujarat, in which Muslims were blamed for burning a train without any proof. And then Hindu mobs were allowed and encouraged to run amok and carry out a program in which 2,000 Muslims were killed. It was reminiscent of Hitler's Reich Kristallnacht, in which Jewish shops and habitations were burnt by mobs aided by fascist paramilitary groups, while the police looked on. The pretext for the attacks was assassination of German diplomat in Paris by a 17-year-old Polish Jew. Gujarat 2002 was the same model. Vajpayee, the PM, turned an eye and shielded Modi. As a result of polarization from the program, the Hindus voted for Modi to be re-elected in 2002 as Chief Minister of Gujarat. Clearly, attacking minorities brought Hindu votes to the BJP. At the time, RSS ominously warned that the Gujarat was the laboratory of Hindutva, and its program against Muslims would be repeated elsewhere. Of the Congress in 2004 to 2014, the period of high economic growth, leading to the notion that India was emerging as an other economic superpower in 2004. The Vajpayee government lost the national election, and this led to the return of Congress-led government with Dr. Manmohan Singh as the Prime Minister. He had 2 terms as Prime Minister, from 2004 to 2014, and this period was the golden age of Indian economy. Under Dr. Singh, India's economy grew at 8 to 10%. Under him, India even withered the 2008 global crisis, and prosperous middle class of 300-400 billions was created. The Western press even wrote that India was a challenger to China, a new Asian tiger. Singh's politics were not decisive, divisive, and they focused on economic growth and enablement. The Hindu-Muslim clashes receded in the background, and even the Muslims felt the BJP persecution of the preceding years was an aberration. However, despite the economic growth achieved, there were charges of corruption not against Singh but members of his government. And the BJP started playing a combination of anti-corruption and anti-Muslim plank to win the Hindus. Vajpayee gone and Advani sidelined. The RSS and BJP called on Modi, the Hindu hardliner and organizer of the program against Muslims in Gujarat, to lead their campaign in the general elections of 2014. Now, Modi talked about the economic development in the campaign, but his but his reputation as Hindu nationalist who stands up to Muslims had already been cemented in 2002 by the program he organized in Gujarat. His reputation as a Hindu strongman led to a landslide victory for the BJP in the 2014 national elections. It had a majority at last to implement the RSS vision of Hindu supremacist state, whose main ethos was driven by economic and political destruction of Muslims in India. After the Gujarat program of 2002, the Modi had a visa ban imposed on him by the European Union and the US. However, as soon as Modi became Prime Minister in 2014, the Western countries had to remove the travel ban as he was an elected head of the state. Even the Obama featured the Modi, while Modi as PM reduced direct anti-Muslim rhetoric, had outsourced that to the BJP and RSS cadre. Modi's first term, 2014 to 2019, saw a spate of attacks on Muslims and Christians. There was a Ghar Wapsi program. There was a Ghar Wapsi programs. Muslims were attacked allegedly for cow slaughter. For Hindus in the northern India, vigilantes lynched Muslims over cows, and grisly video clips of the murders were circulated on WhatsApp. An 8-year-old Kashmiri Muslim girl, Asifa Bano, was gang raped by a Hindu priest, his son, nephew, and police in a temple and then murdered. She was gang raped by a Hindu priest, his son, nephew, and police in a temple and then murdered. Afterwards, the BJP and RSS Hindu marched to support freedom of the rapists. Christians were also attacked and their churches vandalized. Modi managed to allow his cadres freedom to do all this, but he allowed a foreign tour program to Western countries. Despite economic failures of his first term, Modi won a second term in 2019 with an even bigger majority. This was partly due to short cross-border confrontation with Pakistan, which mysteriously occurred just before the 2019 general elections. The cross-border airstrike against alleged terror camps was accepted by the Hindu majority as successful, and it reinforced Modi's image of a strong Hindu who stands up to Muslims. In Modi's second term, armed with an even larger majority in 2019, matters took a very serious turn for Indian Muslims. A plan for a Hitler-style reduction of Muslim citizens was unveiled. It started due to a perceived problem of illegal Bangladeshi migration to Assam in the northeast of India, which was allegedly changing Hindu-Muslim population ratio. The government brought a National Register of Citizens (NRC) in Assam to decide between bona fide citizens and illegals. The document asked to prove citizenship were birth certificates and parents' birth certificates. Detention centers or concentration camps started to be built in Assam for those without the citizenship document. Once sent to the concentration camp, the inmate would have no recourse to justice or law as the person was stateless. The problem for many rural people of past generations was that there were no birth certificates. When the NRC was completed for Assam, the result was embarrassing. More Hindus than Muslims were deemed illegals due to lack of required documents of citizenship. The plan had been to extend the NRC to the whole of India. But seeing that more Hindus than Muslims would be deemed stateless, the government sought a way out. In 2019, the Modi government created a Citizenship Amendment Act (CAA), which claimed it was providing humanitarian refuge to persecuted minorities from three Muslim countries: Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. This allowed Hindu, Buddhist, Sikhs, and Christian refugees from these three countries to apply for citizenship, but it expressly denied Muslims. Citizenship based on selective exclusion was reminiscent of Nazi Germany's Nuremberg race laws. However, the purpose was not really a concern of persecuted minorities in three Muslim countries. The purpose was eventually to link the CAA with our NRC. The CAA provided a loophole for Hindus left out the NRC due to lack of documents, birth certificates, to obtain citizenship by claiming they were persecuted refugees from the neighboring countries. That notion would be denied for bona fide Muslim citizens who would not provide birth certificates for citizenship. The combined CAA and NRC would then act to send Muslims selectively to concentration camps, and from there on, it would be a step to a Hitlerian style genocide that the RSS has always wanted. How matters pan out for India remains to be seen. Fascism has failed everywhere, and India will be no exception. In the case of Nazi Germany, it waged war on Europe and had to be destroyed and reconstructed by Britain, the US, and Soviet Union. Germany recovered due to the reconstruction of society, the elimination of propaganda, and the propagation of hate in schools, judiciary, police, and all organs of the state. In the case of Yugoslavia, when the Serb fascism took grip, the country broke into seven countries. To cite Asian examples, the RSS BJP combination in India would like to imitate for Indian Muslims. Myanmar's expulsion for Rohingyas, or imitate China's policies with Uyghurs. Step of violence in settling Han Chinese in Xinjiang intimate China's model against Uyghurs will also not work in India. It will lose its democracy and not attain economic and military power of the Chinese. Unless Indians get a grip on fascism, the outcome will be like Yugoslavia. It is possible that the Indians will eventually launch a civil disobedience movement in the Gandhian style to contest the RS BJP's fascism. India surprised the world with that approach when it demanded independence from Britain. Indians will have to do the same and demand a ban on the RSS. The hopeful side is that, unlike the Chinese, the Indian intelligentsia have experience of secular democracy and liberal values, and they will get organized in India and abroad to contest fascism. It will be wiser if Hindus realized that Indian Muslims are an asset for them and can be used to help bring a final settlement between India and Pakistan. Indians should be seeking inspiration from their own historical personages like Mughal Emperor Akbar, who managed to rule successfully because he understood that to govern India, its two largest communities, the Hindus and Muslims, have to be carried along. Following the RSS Hitler model can only result in the same outcome for India as Germany's destruction. India's best course of action is to negotiate a settlement with Pakistan and Kashmiris and work towards the creation of European Union style of confederation in South Asia with free movement of people. The Indian Muslim minority is not like Rohingya and the Uyghurs, and it would be foolhardy for the rest of the world to look the other way. Other countries need to realize it is financially risky to invest in India under the RSS BJP. They need to study RSS literature written by its founders like M.S. Golwalkar and see their admiration for Hitler's model for minorities. Western countries in particular should be able to see where fascism will lead India. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. Walter Lindler, German ambassador to India, visited the RSS quarters to understand more about RSS. It was shocking that the ambassador of the country that spread misery to Europe and with Nazism, sought understanding of a Hindu group which wants to run India according to Hitler's model. Perhaps this reflects the rise of neo-Nazism in Germany. It is a cruel irony that Germans want to learn about Nazism from Hindu group of the 1920s. Likewise, the US Consul General in Mumbai, David J. Rank, attended a ceremony in February 2020 to honor the RSS founder, Hedgewa. The US was the country that fought to liberate Europe from the Nazi Germany. Western countries should realize if the concentration camps are used in India, there will be protests and eventually civil war, and it will lead to refugees and even confrontations between Indians and Pakistanis settled in the Western countries, where they are both present in large numbers. Western countries will not be immunized against these problems. The problems of India and Pakistan will spill into the West. Gulf and Arab countries also need to realize that the RSS has been collecting funds in their countries to persecute Muslims in India. Instead of rewarding Modi with awards, they should be aware that the fallout of this persecution will affect their countries, and so they must reject the proponents of fascism in India today. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.